restraint. But imagine Indra's situation, from being there in Amravati, being the king of the demigods, into a hog's body, rolling in stool and dirt. So Lord Brahma, he goes to Indra in that condition and says, please come back. Please come back. The throne in heaven is empty, and you please come back and take it. What does Indra say? I am very happy here. I get nice fresh stool every day. I don't want to leave this nice condition. Why should I go? And Lord Brahma was shocked. Of course, I'm embellishing the story quite a bit, you understand. But the storyline is definitely that Indra did not want to go back because he felt, hey, this is not so bad. I have a wife, I have the little piglets. I'm doing pretty good. I don't want to go. And so even Lord Brahma was surprised. My gosh, look at the way the conditioning of the Vishnu Maya, this is called Vishnu Maya, the Lord's illusory potency, is such that in such a terrible condition, he thinks, hey, this is not so bad. Then what to speak of us? That we are so conditioned by the material energy that we think it's not so bad. And because we think it's not so bad, the urgency with which, or the enthusiasm with which we receive the instructions of the spiritual master is very weak. We're hardly enthusiastic. Maharaj has been discussing weakness of heart. Yesterday's verse was Vyavaya Dina Vivasho Vyavaya Dina Vivasho Swa Bandhana. That was the second line of yesterday's verse. Vivaya Dino Vivasha Swabandhane. This Dina, he's been explaining as the weakness of heart. The weakness of heart is that one doesn't feel the urgency or the enthusiasm to change their situation, even if they know that it's not so good. And the reason is, yesterday we heard Swabandhane, Vivashaha Swabandhane. The one is bound by one's own activities. The example Bhagavatam gives is that a silkworm makes a cocoon out of its spit. That's the silk. And what happens? He gets trapped in it. He traps himself inside the cocoon. Similarly, the conditioned living entity, by his activities, traps himself in this material world. So we are acting against our best interest. And just by dint of being in this world, that's what we're doing. We don't know. We don't know anything better. And the reason we are capturing ourselves, or we are trapping ourselves in this material world, there's one factor that's working. It's called attachment. Or here in this case, it says attraction to this material realm. The phrase Maharaj used is asat trishna. This great urge or taste for that which is temporary. And here it says asat jita atma. Asat jita atma means having conquered that. Rahugana, you should. Apihi advanosya. You're certainly a victim on the path of material existence. So what should you do? Sanyasta danda krita bhuta maitra. Sanyasta danda. This sanyasta means to give up. This danda, the rod by which you punish the criminals, because that's his responsibility. King is meant to make sure that there is what we say law and order in the kingdom. Everyone should follow their duties, and if someone does not, then he is responsible for punishing them. It is his duty to do so, to bring back the sense of order. And Rahugana's problem is that he has become trapped in thinking, I am the king. This is called upadhi, designation. So we all have upadhis. I am temple president, I am such and such, I am a father, I am an employee, etc. So he's saying, first of all, give up those designations, sanyasta danda. And not only give up the designations, you cultivate softness in your heart. Krita bhuta maitra, become equal to all living entities. Because we have a tendency, due to our designations, we start distinguishing among others. These are my friends, these are my enemies. These persons I like, these persons I don't like. Because I'm the king, these are all persons I have jurisdiction over. I can punish them if I like. Krita bhuta maitra. Become friendly to all living entities. There's a picture on the wall, painting of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse 18. It talks about a person who is uh, in knowledge. It says that a person with knowledge, vidya vinaya sampanne, brahmane gavihastini, shunichaiva swapakecha, pandita samadarshinaha. A person endowed with knowledge sees a brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater with equal vision. Can you mute that thing because it's replaying those sounds? Oh, is it downstairs? You close this door, please. So, this equal vision can only be possible when one comes to a spiritual platform. One starts thinking that I am not this body, I am a spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. Unless we operate on this platform, we will never be able to go beyond this distinction of friend and enemy. I like, I don't like. It's just not possible. And then he says, Asat Jitatma, please turn away from this very attractive material energy. Turn away. And he says, Jita Atma. You cannot turn away because I decide, oh, tomorrow I will not enjoy the material energy. It's not possible. Jita Atma, you have to conquer on the spiritual level. And how do you do that? Hari Sevaya. That's the only way. And he says, Shitam, sharpen Gyanasim, this sword of knowledge has to be sharpened. So we'll come to that. So Harisevaya, this same principle is spoken in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. Yesterday Bhakta Richard asked the question, and it's in that verse. Where Krishna says, Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha Man Maya Upashraya Bahavo Jnana Tapasa Puta Mad Bhavamagataha. That there are many persons who have transcended the clutches of attachment, fear, and anger, and have come to me. And he says, Bahavo Jnana Tapasa, by being austere in knowledge, Puta have become purified, Madbhavam Agataha. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains Madbhava means they experience ecstasy in their relationship with me. So in this material world, everyone is influenced by attachment, fear, and anger. One is not free of these, and the only way to get free is the more we become ecstatic in our relationship with Krishna. And that ecstasy begins with sadhana bhakti. The more we engage in our regulated devotional service every day, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, we go beyond attachment, fear, and anger. That's the only solution. So here also he is saying, Asat Jitatma Hari Sevaya. So, anyone here, any one of us who has attraction to the material energy? All of us. And the only way to get beyond it is Hari Sevaya. And it's nice, the phrase is Hari Sevaya. Because the word Hari, Maharaj explained a few days ago, that Hari means one who takes away. So he takes away our material attachment, or he takes away our taste for material energy. And he does it by his potency of being what's called Madan Mohana. Madan Mohana is Krishna who attracts us. Because we anywhere we have affinity. We should have either affinity for his external energy or for his internal energy. So Madan Mohan is the personality of Godhead who attracts our attention from the material energy towards himself through the process of bhakti. So he's called Hari. So when we engage in the service of Lord Hari, he takes away our attraction for material energy. Because that is given by him. False ego is his energy. We are entrapped in this material world because of his what's called Vishnu Maya. And so he takes it away. Hari Sevaya. And to be determined to be in relationship with Krishna, from our side, he's saying we need Shritam Jnanam Asinam, a sharpened sword of knowledge. This sword of knowledge is sharpened by hearing every day. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Naishtiki means fixed. So, to have fixed devotional service or fixed devotional consciousness, we should hear and serve Bhagavatam every day. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So the translation is that by regularly attending classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's how Prabhupada translates it, that all the unwanted things in the heart are removed and bhakti is established as an irrevocable fact. So by hearing Bhagavatam every day, or by serving the Srimad Bhagavatam every day, by serving the person Bhagavata every day, the sword of detachment becomes sharpened. Jnanam asinam shritam. Because if you have a sharpened sword, it's easy to cut. Anyone work in the kitchen, you know. If you have a blunt knife, you can't cut easily. In fact, there are accidents with a blunt knife. You have a sharpened knife, it's easy to cut. This sharpened sword of knowledge is the antidote for the Hridaya Daurbalyam. The weakness of heart is overcome when our knowledge is sharpened. So hearing every day is very, very important. That hearing every day, morning and evening, creates sufficient force in the heart to move it from I cannot do it to I can. Yesterday we heard, I can't means I won't. There's this Prabhupada narrates this joke. There's a husband and wife. The husband is very interested in Krishna consciousness. The wife is not. The husband keeps telling the wife, chant, chant, chant. And she repeats, can't, can't, can't. Weakness of heart. So jnanam asinam. And he says, adaya. Jnanam asinam adaya. Taking the sword of knowledge in your hand, you cut that knot of attachment to this material world. And tarati param. Atiparam. You tarati param. Tara atiparam. You can cross over to the other side. Yesterday in our Bhakti Viksha, we played a little game. It was a very interesting game. The same concept. I was actually going to do for our Ishtagoshti today, if we have time. I don't think we have, but we'll see. The game was very simple. We had a group, and it's called The Psychiatrist. So there's a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave in October of 1972. And the excerpt of that lecture is, in this material world, everyone is mad. Everyone is mad because they are operating on a false sense of identity. Someone thinks, I am a king. Someone thinks, I am a Brahmana. Someone thinks, I am such and such. And they're every day operating on these false designations. And they don't know that they are spirit soul. And it is foolish because it's all going to come to an end. That's the quote. So the game was, one of the persons in the Bhakti Vriksha will be the psychiatrist, and they have to leave the room. And the other members are mad persons because they have a false sense of identity. So we gave them different identities. And the psychiatrist has to come back into the room and ask questions. And they can only ask questions in which the answers will be either a yes or a no. They can't ask anything else. And they have to uh, diagnose what is the particular disease that person has. Like, oh, you have a disease, you think you're the king. You're not the king, like that. And he is supposed to answer questions according to a king, yes or no questions. It was so much fun. So for lack of time, we made one person, one Mataji, the temple president. And we made another Mataji, another Prabhu, a sannyasi. So all the questions were, are you a man? Yes. Do you serve in the temple? Yes. Are you a pujari? No. Do you cook in the kitchen? Yes. Are you a head cook? No. So do you work in the office? Yes. Like that. And then just, oh. And that's a disease because you think you're the temple president. Or you're disease that you think you're a sannyasi. Because Lord Chaitanya told us that, my dear Krishna, I'm neither a brahmachari, a grihastha, a vanaprastha, or a sannyasi, nor am I a brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, or a shudra. My real identity is that I am the servant of the maintainer of the gopis, Lord Sri Krishna. Gopi bhartur padakamalayor dasa dasa anudasa. This verse, all pujaris recite as soon as they enter the altar. And before we begin any worship, we stand in front of the deities and we pray. I am not such and such pujari. I am not a grahastha, vanaprastha, nothing. I'm just a servant of the servant of the servant of Lord Shri Krishna. And we begin our worship. Because you can only worship Krishna when you're established in your constitutional position. At least in this case, that's how we start. A few minutes later, we may not remember that. But that's the essence. That is our real identity. Any other identity, it's craziness. And so he's asking us, Jnana asinam adaya. Pick up the sword of knowledge and cut it. Cut that attachment. So that's the whole Bhagavad Gita. Whatever I've described is the two verses in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, texts 3 and 4. So this material world is compared to a massive inverted banyan tree with its roots upwards and branches and leaves downward. And Krishna says, you cannot understand the form of this material realm. Na rupam asyeha tatha upalabhyate. You cannot understand. Because nanto na chadir na sampratishkita. You cannot understand where it ends, nanto. Na cha adir, you don't know where it begins. Na sampratishthita. You don't know where it's fixed, where the roots are. You can't tell. It's too big. This material realm is too complicated and too big for any living, simple, conditioned soul to fathom. For example, we cannot fathom all the intricacies of this material body, and it's very close to us. Then, what to speak of this massive cosmos? How do we know? There is no satellite, no rocket that can fly to the end of the universe and report back. It's not possible. In fact, we can't even approach the end of the universe with our mind. Not just our, of course, with our mind we can't approach anything. But even the great sages whose minds are very controlled. The Brahma Samhita says, Panthastu koti shatavatsara sampragamyo vayorathapi manaso munipungavanam sopyasti yad prapada simna avichinta tatve govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. The greatest of thinkers with their full mental and intellectual capacity cannot even approach the limits of the universe, even if their minds travel at the speed of wind. Not possible. And he says, Ashwathamenam. The Ashwatha means this banyan tree. Ashwathamenam suvirudha moolam. It is so intricately connected. And he says, Asanga shastrena drudhena chitva. Suvirudha means very strongly, intricately, strongly connected. And so he says, Asanga Shastra, by the weapon of detachment, Drudhena, with determination, Chitva, you must cut. So, where do we get our determination from? We begin our Krishna consciousness, or the Bhagavad Gita begins with, we have a weak heart. We're not determined. And Krishna is saying the only way to get beyond it is with determination. So determination is a double-edged entity. One edge of it comes from the Guru Parampara, because we get instructions that are supposed to enhance our determination. Or to put it in a simpler language, our relationship with our Guru Parampara is from where we get the sense of determination. From their side, the presence of sadhus in our life is the first edge of determination. So that means we are not alone. When we know that we are not alone, it's easier to become more determined than when we figure out that I'm in alone and all of this. That's the first edge. The second edge is our commitment to that relationship or relationships. That sharpens the determination. Because we can have all the gurus in our life, all the devotees cheering us up, but if we don't do anything about it, then we can't be determined. So it's double-edged. So one edge is already taken care of. By dint of coming to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, the entire Guru Parampara, all the Vaishnavas, they're ready. They're ready to help us. But we find that our sword is still not sharp. It is blunt. Because our giving in, our acting in the relationship with the devotees and Guru needs a little attention. We take it for granted, or we don't really engage ourselves heavily in this relationship, and therefore we find our determination to be weak. And most times, we have our weak determination shows up where? And not being able to follow some things we said we will follow. Oh, I want to wake up early, we can't. Oh, I will not eat more prasadam, we can't. Oh, whatever, I will not get tempted by such and such, but we can't. because the sword of detachment is not sharp, it's still blunt. Because our acting in the relationship hasn't been really to its best degree. And this is common sense that if we keep a blunt knife and exactly when we want to cut something, uh, it doesn't help. And at that time, if we start sharpening the knife, it doesn't work either. So it's always nice to keep a sharpened knife ready. That means don't wait for a challenge to come. Every day, we commit ourselves or we engage in our relationship with the Guru Parampara and Krishna, then that's the way of keeping a sharp sword ready. Whenever a challenge comes, we're ready to cut. It says, Tataf padam tat parimargitavyam. Um, he said, Krishna then says, one should search out the source of this tree, this inverted banyan tree. One should search out. Yasmin gataha na nivartanti bhuyah. In such a way that once you search out where this tree is sourced from, you can cut it so you can go to the other side. Yasmin gata, once going to the other side, na nivartanti bhuyah. Again, you don't have to come back to this material world. Tam evacha adyam purusham prapadye. And in that realm, one is serving that original personality of Godhead. Yatah pravritti prasata purani. He says Yatah pravritti means from whom everything emanates. Prasruta, extended. Pravritti, at the beginning. The point is, Krishna is saying, from this material world, cut your attachment to all the things that keep you back and go back to Godhead, such that we won't have to come back to this terrible place. Same instruction Krishna gave Arjuna, same instruction Jadabharati giving Maharaj Rahugana. It's the same instruction every spiritual master gives the disciple. Do not be attracted to this glare of the material energy. Give your attention to the internal potency of Krishna through the service, Hari Sevaya. So, any questions or comments? Yes, Jitendra Prabhu. Really? No application questions? It's interesting.
Keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the prize. The whole world's suffering from an identity crisis, like you said. But then you said, I remember it being said like this, by regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, practically all that is troublesome is destroyed. But you said all. What is that little almost, there's always something.
The word used in Bhagavatam is prayeshu. Prayeshu means almost all.
Yeah.
And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur describes that even at the stage of bhava, all of one's anarthas are not absolutely removed. They're completely removed, but not absolutely removed. So the story of Bharat Maharaj, even on the bhava platform, he did something that was not proper. And so the point is, continuing that way, all of it was removed.
Thank you.
Bhakti Richard had something.
You mentioned our side of the sword being commitment.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, as what would you suggest as a step towards on our side? Because I mean, in all practicality or honesty, I would say that there's some attachments I'm thinking of that, they seem so insurmountable. So the question is, what's a step towards making this side of the commitment?
Well, that side of the sword does not get sharpened in one day. It's an everyday. It's a nitya Bhagavata seva. Every day a little bit. Every day, little bit. And to that degree, every day there is a sincere sharpening of the sword. To that degree, we are determined. And when this whole past few days, the whole discussion, I'm just building on what Maharaj spoke, is slackening of that submission. As soon as submission slackens, first thing that happens is the determination becomes weak, the attraction to material energy awakens again, and whatever we had left behind, we become attracted to the same things. That's what he said, right? So the sharpening of the knowledge is to always be alert, never become not vigilant, always be vigilant. And we're vigilant when we care for that relationship. When we don't care for the relationship, even a little bit, then our attention shifts from that relationship with Guru and Krishna to something else. And that's when the slackening of submission happens, the weakening of determination, everything just rushes in. So, so our commitment is that we are always vigilant, or we're trying to be more and more vigilant. We sing in the morning, Bandhu moi savadhana mate. Savadhana means very vigilant. Oh, my dear spiritual master, every day I'm very vigilant about my relationship with you. That vigilance is our contribution. And we can see that our vigilance is weak because we're very easily distracted into other things. Whatever those things are, money, security, career, uh, fame, uh, what's that called? Appreciation, recognition by others, whatever. Different folks have different stuff, but that's what distracts us. Envy. Anything else? Yes, Mother Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. In the beginning of the class, you were mentioning about I, what I interpreted as the mode of goodness. When one gets conditioned to happiness and the comforts of the mode of goodness. My question is related to preaching because many students are in the mode of goodness, actually, not all of them, but they cultivate it. And so there is a sense of happiness within their life that they are comfortable with to some extent. And I find it difficult to convince them that actually you're suffering, actually your life is very miserable because you don't have Krishna, which is true, but for them they cannot see. And even Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says that when you cultivate a certain mode, you can't see certain. So my question is related to that.
Yes. So, I was not referring to the mode of goodness. Um, Happiness in the mode of goodness is characterized by one's being attached to knowledge and the happiness for the sake of happiness. In mode of passion and ignorance, the conceptions are different. So the example of Lord Indra was to help us understand that even in ignorance, one is blissful. Ignorance is bliss, as they say. But it's not the same bliss that a sage experiences. The tendency is, in this whole series of verses, I don't know if you've been following, there's one word that's kept repeated again and again and again and again, and multiple times in a verse. You know what that word is? Kvachit? Kvachit, sometimes. So that's the, right? Noticed? That the past 10 verses have this word kvachit. Sometimes this, sometimes that. Sometimes this, sometimes that. Sometimes this, why sometimes? This is I haven't read it. This is just my, I guess, appreciation of it. If something continues for a long period, the human being has a tendency to resign to it in such a way that they're happy within it. Right? What people resign to the fact. But you see, it's sometimes, that means it keeps changing. And the more it changes, you cannot settle down with anything. And so the sense of suffering is quite more. So as students, they're not in the mode of goodness. I mean, quite contrary, actually. They're in the mode of ignorance. But there is a sense that even in ignorance, they'll be blissful. So the only way for someone to see the other side is what's called higher taste. The higher taste for any one of us can only come not from intellectual acceptance of it, but from a relationship with the devotee who's preaching to them. So, suppose someone gives a roaring class, that's fantastic. There'll be a transformation to that degree. But unless it is nurtured by a relationship with devotees, one doesn't have the strength to give up that older conception. Unless there's a personality like Srila Prabhupada, just by his presence, hearts moved like anything. And the attraction was very, very intense. And now what to do? We're not Srila Prabhupada. So over time, relationships help person move, take small steps away from that conditioned nature into a different realm. That's the only way. Preaching is by relationships. Go ahead.
I'm just confused about whether or not students are really in the mode of ignorance and why rather, and then if they're in the mode of ignorance, then who in society is in the mode of goodness? Who can we? I'm confused why we
If
consider
students are in the
students.
mode of ignorance,
Yes, because they are searching out knowledge. I mean, it's not.
oh, I must
Sometimes it's
congratulate you. You must
spiritual.
be moving with the really nice folks. But to generalize that all students are in mode of goodness would not be. I don't think all students are looking
No,
for
I don't think so
knowledge.
either.
Yeah, some maybe. So in that sense, then there is a large percentage who's in the mode of ignorance. Like being in an educational institution,
Yeah, it
so
doesn't equal.
they can still do highly ignorant activities.
Yes, I agree.
We can't say, we can say for sure that it's not necessary that everyone who joins a university joins because they're in the pursuit of knowledge. They're in the pursuit of money, something else actually. And going to university is just a means to get to the ultimate motive. There may be some who are genuinely interested in knowledge. You could characterize that aspect of them is in goodness. But the same person can be eating meat and drinking alcohol. So there's the ignorant tendency also in them. It's a mix. And in Kali Yuga, the proportion of goodness is very, very small. Is that okay? Yes, Mother Ramya. It's making funny sounds. Yeah. Yeah. Very simple. Well, simpler said than done, but simple as everything that we do, we ask ourselves, for who are we doing this? And how we do something is guided by under whose guidance or instruction am I doing this versus this. My nature will say, do that. But I've heard from the spiritual master, do like this. So although I have inclined to doing that, I do this. Sometimes dualities come. Every time. Every time. And how to go beyond the duality is the relationship with sadhus and guru that say, although this is a duality, my conditioned nature is to respond like this. Let's say anger. Something, someone said something, my conditioned nature is to immediately respond back. Boom! Or be defensive. But we hear from the spiritual master, Ashanga Shastrena Dridena Chitva. Oh, Hare Krishna. Because my spiritual master asked me to do like this. Because then the relationship is in the forefront of our consciousness. So we keep that as important versus responding from our conditioned nature immediately. We're very reactive persons. Situation comes and we react to it. But sharpening our sword means before we react, we consider, we contemplate what would be the most appropriate response to this situation such that it is pleasing to Guru and Krishna. There you go. That's how we sharpen. That's how we act in that relationship. And we find ourselves most of the time that we don't have time to even consider like that. We're very busy reacting to situations. So that's an indication that somewhere that relationship is in the background. So we have to bring it to the foreground. So we start with smaller things. Most difficult situations may be difficult. On a day to day basis, we start somewhere. Simple things. When we first enter the temple room, think about the spiritual mass. So we are supposed to think 3 times a day anyway, but like different ways. Different activities. About to start cooking. For who am I cooking? We're about to start some activity. For who am I? We're about to start kirtan. For who am I doing this? And in the middle of kirtan, we want, I'm just picking kirtan as an example. Oh, you can get distracted with, oh, I'm singing so nicely. This tune's coming. Oh, who am I singing for? Whose pleasure is this? Whose pleasure am I thinking about? That's a way of, I used to use the word calibrating. We recalibrate our consciousness when that relationship is. There's a whole month I had just used the word recalibrating. It's coming back to me. That's how we recalibrate. We bring our consciousness from somewhere else to the transcendental realm. And our contact with Krishna is Guru and the sadhus and Shastra. These 3 things are our contact with Krishna. Is that okay? Is there any alarm to remember? Yeah, Shastra, morning Bhagavatam class. But what happens? If you use the alarm analogy, then we fall asleep. We also hit the snooze button after some time. Is there an alarm? Yeah. The alarm, you can hear the alarm or recognize the alarm when you're alert. So we say Bandhumo is Savadhana. And the way the alarm rings is there's always some situation around us to attract us away from Krishna. There's always a situation. It's not possible. Then you don't need the alarm. So that's the problem. That's correct. That's because the mind The intelligence and the senses are completely disconnected with each other. The senses are doing something, the mind is somewhere else. So we have to ask. So there's a practical way of going through these things. Practical way is before we start some service, be very clear, or at least we should try to be. For who am I doing this service? What should be my consciousness when I'm about to start this service? That may it be for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. And we get into the service, and because we are conditioned, we tend to forget. So in the middle of it, somehow we have to ask, whoa, where's my consciousness right now? It's a good question to ask ourselves during the day. Where's my consciousness right now? And at the end of the service, you offer it to Krishna. My dear Krishna, I started off with this such and such, and in between I traveled the universe, and I've come back here. And please accept this service. I offer it to you. We offer it to my spiritual master because he will adjust all the things that are lacking in it. But I offer it to you. Please accept this service. And if you're so kind, if you give me another opportunity to serve you, I'll try to improve my consciousness. And we get another opportunity, and we mess that up. We get another opportunity, we mess that up. But that's how we keep going. In the beginning, in the end, and in the middle. And these three is called sandhyas, which we do during the day, 3 times a day. Dhyayam stuvamsu yashastri sandhyam. And Prabhupada describes that it's also in the 3 phases of life. Kaumaram, Yavanam, Jara. So at the atomic level, and at the micro level and the macro level, it's the same principles. To remember. In simple language, it's called being present. Where are we? Where is our consciousness? It travels all over the universe. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Oh, all the devotees here